For the first time, we're going to check out the stadiums of an African football league. No, not the Chad Premier League, but the South African Premier Division instead. Let's check them out. Moses Mabhida Stadium. We start off with what might not only be the most spectacular stadium in the league, but also the continent and perhaps the world. That's mainly due to this 106 metre tall arch that is supposed to resemble that Y shape on the South African flag. Its most notable feature, however, is the sky car, as they call it. Remarkable. When it comes to the interior, well, it too is quite striking, with its coastal colour scheme. Just stunning. It is a great stadium overall, but the one thing that lets it down as a football venue is the fact that it's not rectangular. I guess they're keeping their options open. DHL Stadium. Well, it might not quite be as spectacular as the last one, but I can appreciate its more subtle design, with the undulating outer structure wrapped in a glass fibre mesh. This is a rectangular stadium, as you can see, but what you might also be able to see is an entire section of seating missing. That was removed after the 2010 World Cup as intended, but I can't help but feel that they could have designed it to be less conspicuous. However, to make up for that eyesore, some spectators are treated with a view of the top of Table Mountain. Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. This design is supposed to resemble a flower. I guess so. Either way, I think they're playing a dangerous game with that. Africanized bees don't mess around.
You've come to the wrong neighborhood, my friend. Now piss off.
The interior has a fairly distinctive layout, with most of the capacity coming from the lower tier, but with 2 or 3 tiny upper tiers. I also appreciate the combination of red seats and slightly darker red seats. It's a small detail that makes a small difference. Sugar Ray Zulu Stadium. This venue is also named after a legend, but a footballer this time. Although it's quite small, it still has a pretty cool design. The main stand's arched roof pales in comparison to the arch we saw earlier, but would certainly stand out in what isn't a particularly built-up neighbourhood. Also, due to the design of each stand, those in the upper tier are right on top of the action. Yeah, this is pretty good ground. FNB Stadium. This is home to a team called Kaiser Chiefs, and I'm wondering, were they named after the band or was the band named after them? I guess we'll never know. This extraordinary venue, host of the 2010 World Cup final, is the largest stadium in Africa. That curvaceous exterior is inspired by the calabash, a type of South African pot. It might be one of my favourite exteriors going round, and apparently some Russian architects have the same opinion, because at the next World Cup we saw this stadium. The OG is far superior though. I love that all orange seating bowl, which is not something you see every day. Not even when watching the Orange Bowl. Loftus Versfeld Stadium. This historic venue, the oldest in the league, is certainly known for rugby first and foremost. But what is not so well known is that it hosted first-class cricket back in the day, before the Sundowns even existed. The stadium has obviously changed a lot since then, and rather than an oval, we have a very compact rectangular stadium, where the multiple tiers of seating are basically stacked right on top of each other. It's a design that suits the name Loftus. I mean, I don't know what Loftus means, but it's lofty like a loft, and lofts are lofted. Harry Gwala Stadium. This is situated in a town called Pietermaritzburg. The only reason I've heard of Pietermaritzburg is that it's where the cricketer Kevin Peter Peterson is from. Kevin Peter Peterson from Pietermaritzburg. His parents must have been Peterphiles. Although simple, the stadium has everything you need really. 2 all-seater stands, one of which has plenty of roof coverage. Peter Mokaba Stadium. Only one side of this stadium has a roof, but it's a unique roof in the way it's supported. These structures are inspired by the baobab tree, which along with giant flightless birds and cooking large quantities of meat on the barbecue, is something that Australia shares with South Africa. Anyway, the colour scheme of the seating is basically the same as FNB Stadium's exterior, and that's obviously no bad thing. It looks fantastic. Dobsonville Stadium. Ooh, we have the first appearance of an athletics track, but it's not all that surprising to see one. South Africa has some killer track athletes, as you probably know. Anyway, the stadium is in pretty good condition considering its age, as it was renovated prior to the World Cup where it was used as a training facility. Orlando Stadium. Home of the Orlando Pirates, and I bet most people not familiar with South African football would assume that was the name of an American sports team. But the club actually has a longer history than most of America's professional teams. The stadium's been around for a while as well, although it was the major rebuild prior to the 2010 World Cup that made it what it is today. It's pretty much a new stadium built from scratch actually, with a nice clean looking interior in a muted colour scheme. Not too bad. Richards Bay Stadium. Not much to say about this one. There is just the one stand and even that's quite basic, but it has recently undergone a bit of a renovation with the new seats installed. There's nothing else but grass that surrounds the rest of the stadium, but that's alright. Chatsworth Stadium is home to a club called Royal AM. No offense intended, but Royal AM sounds like the world's most dull radio station.
I believe we have Linda from Sunderland. Linda, what is your favourite thing about King Charles?
I like the way he says the word cabbage.
Yes.
You know, he says it in a very confident way.
Yes, I have noticed that. Well, thanks for calling in, Linda. Do you have any song requests?
Cabbage. Cabbage.
Okay, you're listening to Royal AM. How about a bit of Little Red Corvette?
Anyway, this stadium has a very interesting seating situation. Three sides of the field are surrounded by a grass embankment. That's not unusual. We saw it at the last stadium. But what is the fact that the grass basically acts as a first tier of seating on the western side, with an upper deck more or less behind it. Danny Craven Stadium. This is situated on the grounds of Stellenbosch University, and is used by their football team as well as Stellenbosch FC, making it one of the bigger college football stadiums outside of the US, probably. It's perhaps not in the best condition, but that doesn't really matter, because the best part about the stadium is that scenic mountain backdrop. Speaking of the backdrop, if you're a bit of a cheapskate, you can sit on the surrounding hills and watch the game. Lucas Masterpieces Maripa Stadium. For the most part, this place doesn't deviate too far from a typical multi-purpose stadium design. There are no fancy facades, the seats don't have any massaging capabilities, and the grass doesn't even have Bluetooth connectivity. But what I like most about the stadium doesn't need a big budget, it's just how steep the seating is, which not only makes for a more intimidating atmosphere, it also slightly makes up for their distance from the field. Mbombela Stadium. We've saved what is perhaps the most interesting stadium for last. With those bright orange support structures in the shape of giraffes, and the zebra-like pattern on the inside, this place certainly has an eye-catching design. Unfortunately, the reason for this flamboyant design is kinda dark. Through a campaign of terror, the Zebra-Giraffe Coalition forced their way into power, and for years now, they've run this town. What they say goes, and thus we have a stadium that looks like giraffes and zebras. So, there you have it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, have a good one.